loose. Your chamber hopes over the course of this forum this evening that you have a chance to meet the candidates, hear about their platforms, and how they can best serve you as residents of the Edmonton-Wetaskiwin riding. My name is Richard Horncastle. I'm honored to be your moderator for tonight. I kind of got off to a rough start. I was in the foyer earlier, and a guy came up to me and said, "Oh, it's you again." And I said, "Yeah." He said, Aren't you wearing the same outfit you wore to the last forum?" I said, "No, yeah." And then he said, "You're probably going to use the same jokes as last time too." And that's when I said, "Hey, look, I thought you weren't even coming tonight, Dad." I'm going to start the forum by explaining a few rules which the candidates have received and agreed to ahead of time. The candidates are seated before you according to a draw that we did earlier tonight. We were going to do Nerf guns at 10 paces, but I forgot the Nerf guns, so we drew numbers. And this will be the order for the opening statements. And then we will take your questions in a random order. I used a random number sequencer so that it's fair to all the candidates. And then when we do closing statements, we'll do them in the reverse order. So we'll start at the far end and come this way. We'll be jumping around a little bit, so if you get dizzy, close your eyes, take a deep breath. It can help to focus on an object in the distance, so if you want to stare at me, that's fine, I'm used to it. Candidates are going to have 2 minutes for their opening statements, 1 minute to answer each of your questions, and then 1 minute to wrap up with their closing statements. Our official timekeeper has the timing device. It's a television screen here at the front. The candidates can see the timer count down. If you go over your allotted time, I will say thank you and move on to the next speaker. If you go over a second time, I will ask you to apologize in your best Donald Trump impression, which is actually really hard to do because he's never apologized for anything. And I'll remind the candidates that interrupting each other and personal references are out of order. I'd also remind you that your devices should be in airplane mode. For our audience, in the interest of being as efficient as possible and getting you the information we need, please silence your cell phones, but you don't have to put them away. You can Snapchat your Instagram and tweet your Facebook friends, and maybe consider using the hashtag Leduc Forum or the hashtag World's Greatest Moderator. This forum is about having your questions answered, so that we ask that you kindly keep quiet throughout the forum. There should be no clapping or booing or cheering or approving or disapproving of any candidate's statements. We will, of course, take a moment at the end of the forum to thank the candidates for their time here this evening. There should be no campaign literature or signage visible in the forum. You're encouraged to submit questions for the candidates on the forms that we provided. Chamber staff are wandering around with the forms, so if you want one, just hold up your hand. If you have one that you've completed, hold up the card and we will collect it. We're expecting to receive quite a number of questions tonight, so chamber staff will be screening the questions from you for clarity and legibility and applicability to all candidates. We'll try to combine questions wherever we can to get to a broad range of topics, so if you don't hear your specific question, it's likely just been combined or reworded with another question. If we don't have time to get to your question tonight, then of course there should be a moment afterwards when you can meet the candidates, or you can also go to their respective campaign offices or chase them down in the grocery store and ask them your questions. I'm sure that'd be fine. Again, I ask that your questions be respectful and remind you that your question should apply to all of the candidates, because all of the candidates will have an opportunity to answer every question posed tonight. That's it for me. I'll introduce you to our candidates. There are 5 of them here tonight for Member of Parliament for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin. I'll introduce you to them in alphabetical order by surname. We have Mr. Travis Kallio from the Veterans Coalition Party of Canada, Mr. Neil Doell with the People's Party of Canada, Mr. Noah Garver with the New Democratic Party, Mr. Mike Lake with the Conservative Party of Canada, and Mr. Richard Wong with the Liberal Party of Canada. Let's begin with our opening statements. Mr. Lake won the draw earlier this evening, so Mr. Lake, the floor is yours, and you have 2 minutes, sir.
I'm going to come out here because I have the opportunity to be on the end, and I'm just going to start by introducing myself. For those of you that don't know me, I've been a Member of Parliament here in Leduc for the last 4 years. I've been a Member of Parliament for 13 years. Of course, the boundaries changed a few years back. Different roles that I've had over my time as a Member of Parliament. Most recently, I'm the Shadow Minister, or have been the Shadow Minister leading into this election campaign for youth, sport, and accessibility. So all 3 of those areas. The coolest thing about that is actually the Prime Minister Trudeau, was the Minister for Youth. He also designated himself in that role, so I was his critic. So in addition to Andrew Scheer, I was the other person within my party that was a critic for the Prime Minister. Prior to that, when we were in government, I sat on a cabinet committee, and I sat on the cabinet committee actually alongside Maxime Bernier, charged with getting the budget back to balance. So, of course, went through a global economic meltdown in 2008 to 2010. We had a plan to get back to balance by 2015, and from 2012 to 2015, I sat on the cabinet committee that evaluated plans to getting that budget back to balance. And we did. We got back to balance by 2015, just in time for the election, as we promised to do. And then, of course, during the 2015 election campaign, the Liberal leader, Trudeau, at the time, promised that he would run modest deficits. And we remember Prime Minister Harper kind of making fun of that a little bit, like, what is this modest deficit you talk of? But that we would be back balanced by this election. And here we are in 2019, and we've run tens of billions of dollars in deficit. In fact, actually, here we are in 2019. We are spending this year over $350 billion as a country. When we were last in government in 2015, just 4 years ago, we spent under $300 billion as a government. So we've gone from under $300 billion in spending to over $350 billion in spending in just 4 years. And we're running tens of billions of dollars in deficit. And I ask you, how many of you in this audience would say that your life is better off today economically than it was 4 years ago? And I ask that question at the doorstep, I ask that question in my roundtables, and the answer is almost nobody says yes. The odd person, they've done well. Loblaws, they got $12 million for fridges. They're doing fairly well under Trudeau. SNC Lavalin, well, we'll see how that goes depending on what happens in the election. But I've got 9 seconds left. I'll get a chance to talk to you a lot more. Thank you so much for allowing me the privilege of being your member of Parliament over the last 13 years. I hope to continue that.
Thank you, sir. We move to Mr. Garber.
I'm not sure if I'm gonna leave it. So, thanks everyone for joining me here today. I want to start by saying it's been an incredibly exciting couple weeks for me here. I want to say that I'm ready and excited to serve this community in Ottawa, and I think people are looking for a change. This is an important election. People are worried about the cost of living. Housing, phone bills, medicine, they all add up for families, and we haven't gotten a real raise in years. And we're facing serious national issues like climate change, and both the Liberals and Conservatives, they haven't done enough on either. The Liberals made big promises in 2015, and Canadians haven't gotten the real change like they were told were coming. They've disappointed people by not making life more affordable and making decisions like the previous government before them that helped big corporations, but not the people that they're supposed to represent. The Conservatives are offering up the same tired Stephen Harper playbook, and Canadians aren't interested in cuts and mean-spirited politics. They're talking a big game about making life more affordable, but at the end of the day, they'll put cuts ahead of families. We've seen that in provincial politics here in Alberta, where the biggest corporations get a big tax cut, and none of us have anything to show for it. New Democrats are in it for you. We're on the side of working Canadians. We're not on the side of the big corporations and the lobbyists. We know that Canadians want a more affordable life. Services like universal pharmacare, action on big issues like climate change. That's why we're going to bring in pharmacare and dental care, which is health care. That's why we're going to save families over $1,000 a year on their phone and power bills. That's why we're going to stop profiting off our young people's student loans, and we're going to make sure that cost isn't a barrier for any bright student that wants to work hard. And we're going to push forward a bold plan on climate change that creates 300,000 jobs, green jobs, and it doesn't leave any communities or any people behind. That's what we'll fight for in Ottawa, and no matter what happens this election. A strong team of New Democrats can make all the difference for you and your family on the issues that matters. That's why I'm asking you to send me there to fight for you.
Well done, sir. Mr. Callio.
All right, not a career politician. My name is Travis Callio. I'm the great-great-grandson of Chief Michel Callio, who signed a Treaty 6 in 1878, not too far from here. So First Nations is a big thing for me because I got a lot of family status and myself Métis. I served 10 years in the military, 7 years with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, and did another 3 years as an electrical mechanical engineer. because I knew there was no future in shooting people after I got out. The Veterans Coalition Party of Canada is a true people's party. We are vets, we are First Nations. We have first responders, single mothers, single dads. We got a 72-year-old grandmother running for a candidate in Nova Scotia. Good for her. We're a people's party. We're going to stand for you. We're going to fight for you. We fought for you abroad. We're going to do it here at home. But now we want to change things a little bit. We don't want to. We're not going to fight for you regardless of your race, class, sexual orientation, or any of that kind of stuff. We don't serve corporate Canada, special interest groups or lobby groups of any kind. Yes, all my signs I paid for them myself, out of my pocket. Let's see, what else we got? Greed is rampant. Poor judgment has become the meal of the day in Ottawa. And we just, like Mike was saying, lots of money. We went way, way over budget, and a lot of it's getting wasted. Our government's fighting our veterans to the tune of, what is it now, $43 million in lawyers' fees. Why I don't get it, I don't understand it. I'm still fighting for hearing aids from 1997. And yeah, lawyers going to be fighting for me soon, hopefully. That was a year ago. I'm here to be a voice. Yes, Canada is fighting to get a seat on the UN table. We pay $76 million just to be in the UN without a seat. And how can we even get a seat when our First Nations people are boiling their water and been promised for decades that they'd have clean water, and they're not getting it? We need to take care of our own people first. And that's just what the Veterans Coalition Party of Canada believes in.
Thank you, sir. We go to Mr. Wong.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight you have an opportunity to hear from speakers from various parties on issues that concern you in the forthcoming election. Now, no doubt, one of the most important issues is jobs. I understand that. It affected my business when I was in the retail automobile business. Our truck sales cut in half. It hurt. But fortunately, I was a few months getting into retirement, so did not hurt me as much as current workers. But this will turn around, folks. We have put shovels into the ground, and TMX is going to get through. The Liberal Party will get it done safely, fairly, and quickly, and possibly with the help of Indigenous partners. But tonight I want to offer you folks the opportunity to access the market just north of you. And we're talking about a 10-minute drive, south part of Edmonton. Now, I presume most of the folks here are from the Leduc area, perhaps Beaumont, maybe 3 or 4 from South Edmonton. It's unfortunate that those voices aren't being heard, and I don't know who set up these forums, but certainly we're lacking the presence of South Edmontonians. They're just as important as you folks here. There's a wealth of business knowledge in South Edmonton. Wealth of money, wealth of workers. What I lack, I believe, is the lack of desire on both the social and political level between city and country folks to invest in each other. We must work together and help each other through difficult times. I believe I can help in this process.
Thank you, sir. We go finally to Mr. Doell.
Thank you. A couple times now, Mr. Lake, he talked about working with Maxime Bernier at the start in his intro, and a couple times he's mentioned a nice quote from Maxime Bernier about him, and I realize I haven't given any quotes either. I have another quote from Maxime Bernier. The Conservative Party has abandoned conservatism. It's another quote from Maxime Bernier. And we're not saying that the members or all the MPs of the Conservative Party fit that description, but the machine that is the establishment Conservative Party certainly fits that bill. We don't know what the Conservative Party leader stands for, and even when he does get harassed into an answer, he often admits that he won't stand up for it if it's going to cost him votes. And if he won't stand up for what he believes in, and he won't allow his MPs to stand up for what they believe in, then there is nothing to tell you that he will stand up for your values or allow a Conservative Party MP to stand up for you. So when you hear the latest promises during the campaign, there is no reason to think a Conservative Party government will fight for their promises, not at a risk to their votes. They won't even deliver on their quarter measures, because they've taken our policies and gone 25%. They will cut taxes a little bit. They will balance the budget eventually. They will stand up for freedom of speech, debate, and difference of opinion. No, they won't. Mr. Lake said that if Trudeau wins, it's the PPC's fault. Voters don't owe the Conservative Party our vote. We should vote for who represents our values, and we value freedom, respect, fairness, and personal responsibility. We would rather stand up for what we believe in than hope for a slightly marginal improvement from what the Liberals have given us. If Andrew Scheer couldn't stand up for conservatism with some passion and conviction over the last couple of years, then it's not on me, it's not on the People's Party, and it's not on the voters. Vote for the policy you agree with. You can get that. Vote on the policies you agree with and that you know will be fought for. I look forward to discussing those policies tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the question and answer portion of our forum. I'll remind everyone that each candidate has 1 minute to answer each question, and we'll be proposing them to the candidates in a random order. Our first question that we received tonight has to do with affordable housing and how difficult it is in Alberta for people to enter the housing market. And that's due to a number of things like how high housing prices, mortgage stress testing barriers, and a weakened economy. So my question to the candidates then would be, how is your party or how is your platform going to respond to people that want to enter the housing market in Alberta? We start with Mr. Callio.
I can speak from personal experience on this. When I moved here a year ago, September, actually, yeah, a whole year ago, from Medicine Hat. So anyway, I moved up here because Veterans Affairs is downtown Edmonton. All the best doctors are here. And I got a little bit of a lung condition that I have to worry about that I kind of got in the military. Anyway, I can't sell my house. Down south, we lost so many jobs. When the oil crashed and everything went downhill, all the big companies pulled out. There's 423 houses on the market last time I checked. 23 in my price range. I paid $287,000 for that house 12 years ago. Now it's worth, the realtors say, like $240. Taxes. City says it's worth $267, so I get to pay taxes on $267, but the market says it's only worth $239 to $250. So we need to change things. Too much money is getting wasted, and we need to put money back into the people's pockets. We need to get rid of that ridiculous stress test, because people can't afford to come up with $20,000 or $40,000 to put down on a house. The young people, you're out of the market unless you got lots of money.
Thank you, sir. We go next to Mr. Wong.
The community of Kalmar is a very nice community, and for those who read my pamphlet, I went to high school in Kalmar, and certainly the prices for homes are much cheaper there. That being said, the Liberal Party, if elected, will be bringing in the new housing plan, which reduces the cost of the property by 10% to assist first-time home buyers. I know it's difficult, especially in different markets. Edmonton, Calgary is not as bad, and most two working couples can afford it. But there's things about what an individual can do, and that is, make sure you're buying wisely. Splurging $5, $6 on a cappuccino. I've never had $5, $6 cappuccino. My lord, we have to
Thank you,
think
Mr. Wong.
sensibly.
I'll be sad to give up my cappuccinos. Mr. Doell?
Some of the other parties will mention their housing plans, and that involves spending money and taking money from one area of the country and putting it somewhere else where the main problem is. The biggest problems in housing are in Toronto and Vancouver, so that's them telling you that they want to take more of your money and send it somewhere else. The People's Party of Canada wants you to be able to keep your money. Our whole policy is based on freedom and responsibility and respect and fairness. So we want to lower taxes, improve the economy by having a pro-business, a pro-investment economy where people can build their lives and get jobs and build their own companies. And that increases affordability for houses because they have jobs to buy houses. And lowering their personal taxes also increases the money in their pocket. So these houses become more affordable. And if we have proper levels of immigration set to fulfill our economic needs and welcoming people like we always have, we don't have the same issues in Vancouver and Toronto that we have now with housing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Garber.
This is a very important question for me. I'm obviously a young person trying to think about building my life in Edmonton. And I think, yeah, things just aren't affordable. Lots of friends not sure if they're ever going to be able to buy a home. And liberal and conservative governments, they just aren't working to keep things affordable. They take meetings with big companies and they cut taxes for the big guys, but then we're stuck in a position where we can't afford the things we need to start a life. So that's why the NDP is going to be bringing in pharmacare, saving families at least $500 a year, even if they already have insurance. We're going to cap cell phone and internet bills, saving almost $250 a year, and we're going to eliminate interest on student loans and bring in affordable childcare.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lake.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that we can have an economy strong enough that we can afford both to live in a house and buy the odd cappuccino. I really do believe that that's possible in Canada. You know, the Liberals put in place a mortgage stress test that goes after the markets in Toronto and Vancouver because that's all they're focused on, Vancouver and Toronto and the big cities. And they forget people like us who live in places like here. And we've said that we're going to reverse the mortgage stress test for first-time buyers. We're going to change it on renewals, mortgage renewals, and we're also going to increase the amortization period to 30 years. But at the same time, we're going to take all sorts of measures to make life more affordable for you. We're going to introduce a universal tax cut that puts more money in everybody in this room's pockets by lowering the lowest tax bracket.
Thank you, sir. We've talked a little bit about Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, so I think maybe now's the time to ask a question about regional differences. For Albertans, this election is about jobs and pipelines and the economy, and for voters in Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal, maybe it's about the opposite. It's about affordability, the high cost of living, affordable housing, because their economies are so strong. So my question is, how can you best help the federal government balance these regional differences in our economy? Let's start with Mr. Garber.
Thank you for your question. I think it's both, the differences you mentioned in the question are part of the same problem. And when we say in Alberta jobs, and they say in Montreal or Toronto that things aren't affordable, that just generally means that everyday Canadians are being left behind by conservative and liberal governments. And so whether you don't have a job or the government isn't preparing for the future or things are too expensive, everyday Canadians are struggling. And so just some of the key platform points that we're just going to make life a bit more affordable by bringing in pharmacare, capping your phone bills, making the wealthy pay their fair share, and just trying to get, I got cut off.
But not by me, by the clock this time. Vancouver might have a good economy, but maybe their hockey team's not so good, am I right? We go next to Mr. Lake.
Well, I actually going to agree with Noah in the sense that they're all connected. Our oil and gas, our ability to sell energy, I'm sure he doesn't agree with me on this, but it's what funds social programs, it's what funds economic growth, it's what funds healthcare and education programs in other parts of the country. And when we shut that off, we wind up in the circumstance that we're in right now, where you have parts of the country where there are significant issues funding these things. Other parts of the country are having challenges with those things. And of course, we have the economic situation that we have here, right here in Alberta, and a federal government running a deficit in the tens of billions of dollars year after year after year. We have to realize in this country that those things that we fund, those things that are important to Canadians from coast to coast, they're not, the money for those things doesn't come out of thin air, and Alberta has been an economic driver of those things for years and years and years.
Thank you, Mr. Callio.
Jobs. All right, jobs. Everybody thinks pipelines. Why pipelines? We ship 95% of our oil goes to, anybody? Yes, the United States. So they take 95% of our oil. Why can't we just build our own darn refinery right up there, right at the source? Skip all the red tape. We won't be, irritating our First Nations families with pipelines going across, worrying about leaks, wildlife, cleanup messes. Big oil companies, they don't really clean up their own messes anyway as it is. We can build our own infrastructure. The Veterans Coalition Party wants to put infrastructure in every province, so we don't have to deal with selling our oil for $1 and getting it back and buying it back for 40 after it's refined. Just using round numbers, just easy stuff. And that's all we want to do. We want to create jobs by making the work happen here and everywhere else.
Thanks for keeping the numbers simple for your moderator, sir. We go to Mr. Doell.
Just to clarify, was it the question about regional differences, how to solve regional differences?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, just make sure I don't go off on the wrong. The best way to solve regional differences is to stop having a bloated, big government, federal government taking control over things in provincial jurisdiction. Then the provinces need to fight over money. We send money to Ottawa so that they can put conditions on that money, whether to decide where they're going to send it back to. There's no need to send most of that, in most of those situations, to send that money to Ottawa to make decisions. We can give provincial jurisdiction back to the provinces as it's controlled in the Constitution, as it was meant to be, so that local differences can be handled locally by people who are involved in the problems they have. And then we don't have another province going to Ottawa and trying to take money from another area, as I mentioned in the housing. In Quebec, they take $13 billion this year out of the federal government that they've acquired because they won't build their own resources. And that's causing a lot of friction when we have a pipeline of cash going to Quebec and they have another pipeline of raw sewage going into the ocean, and they're telling us we have to change our ways.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wong.
The reality of Albertans and Alberta's industry is that we've been a one-trick pony. We cannot be a one-trick pony in this new era of world economy, which are we're dependent on what happens in China, what happens in Europe. So this one-trick pony won't work anymore. We have to, and I'm sorry to say that the Conservative government, consecutive Conservative government, whether it's provincially or federally, have not had the vision to look further ahead and invest in future technology, in other sources, expand our agricultural goods. I blame them for that. And things will have to change. So we cannot be that one-trick pony anymore. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to this next question on seniors and healthcare because it came attached with a note saying there would be cookies in it for me later. Will your party implement a national senior strategy that addresses healthcare, long-term care, caregiver support, and age-friendly communities? So I guess the question is, what is your platform prepared to do for our seniors? We start with Mr. Doell.
Most of our platform is based on people building themselves and having the opportunities to build their careers and lower taxes so that they can save more of the money that they've earned. But with our seniors, our previous governments have made deals with them, and they've expected their federal government and the provincial governments to come through. So it's important that the federal government hold up its federal jurisdiction and its responsibilities that it's agreed to with these people, with the people that have worked hard for our country, paid taxes, built what we have now that we're thankful for. So it's important, and we need to decrease our deficits, have more fiscal room ourselves so we can increase things that are federal jurisdiction and take care of the people that need to be taken care of.
Mr. Lake.
It's an interesting answer, actually, given that his party, the PPC, has proposed drastically cutting immigration. And right now we have about 4 people working for every senior in this country. By 2030, even at the current levels, we'll be at 2.5 people working for every senior. So I don't know how you actually properly take care of your seniors if we don't have the people in this country to do the jobs that need to be done. As a party, we've said that we will take meaningful action. First of all, when we were in government, we introduced the first minister of seniors, responsible for seniors. During this campaign, we've said that we will introduce an increase to the age credit, which will have a meaningful impact for seniors, particularly at the lower income levels. That we will again introduce the universal tax cut, which lowers the lowest tax bracket, which will have a meaningful impact for seniors, and that we'll scrap the carbon tax, most importantly, which seniors disproportionately pay a share of because they're on fixed income. So we will take action in many different areas for seniors.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, sir, the floor is yours.
I am part of the Liberal Seniors Commission while I was VP at the Edmonton Riverbend riding, where I started about 4 years ago. So I know the issues that seniors are taking because what I see here, 80% are seniors here, so it's an important issue. That's why you folks are out here. The Conservative government, had they been coming into power, they would have increased the eligibility for OAS to 67, but the Liberal government put it back to 65. Income supplement will be topped, if elected, up to $947. That's your income supplement top-up. And that would affect about 900,000 single seniors.
Sorry, Mr. Wong, your time is up. We move now to Mr. Garber.
It's getting harder for seniors in this country to retire. People on fixed incomes, and things are getting more expensive. And healthcare is a big part of that. I think a lot of Canadians believe that pharmacare, mental health care, dental care are part of healthcare, and that we have a right to healthcare. But then there's this dissonance where we need to include those things in our healthcare plan. I've got grandparents, and my parents are getting older. I worry about them a lot. And the Conservatives, they raised the retirement age to 67, which that shows that they don't really care as much. And then the Liberals took the side of Sears rather than the pensioners. So we're going to introduce pharmacare, we're going to make medication free, we're going to make housing, affordable housing, and we're going to protect and boost their pensions.
Mr. Callio.
All right, seniors and healthcare. All right, so, correct me if I'm wrong, Member of Parliament. Was there not a vote and got a pay raise, $3,300 a month? Seniors get what, 0.54 cents more a month, something like that? That was the information I was given. Anyway, the money, it's just all boils down to the money, right? It just keeps going out and out and out and out and out. We could be taking care of our senior citizens, drop the taxes down to 10%. What's wrong with that? We could take more money out of the corporate people, take that tax that they want to implement, the other guys coming next year, were capital gains. Okay, so you've owned your house and now you want to move, you're going to take taxes off you again. More money we can be stop taking from people, put them back into their pockets, help our seniors, drop CPP down to 55, and stop taxing CPP as a taxable income.
Thank you, sir. We've gotten a number of questions on government ethics, but I'm not sure how to pose this question because we could be here all night citing examples, I believe. So rather than be specific, I would ask the candidates if they think that we need to bring ethics back to our politics. Let's start with Mr. Wong.
I think my parents did a good job providing me with a sound foundation of what is right and wrong. They were not well-educated people, but they had a sense of what is good and what is bad. And that instilled upon me for many, many years, and I take that truly to heart. A lot of you may or may not know that I was in automobile sales, and the reputation of a used car salesman is pretty bad. Not as bad as lawyers, but still pretty bad. But I was successful in that business because I told the truth. If it's a bad vehicle, I'll tell them it's a bad vehicle. I won't lie to them. And that has stuck with me in all my business dealings, and I hope to take that, if I'm so fortunate, become a member of parliament. Thank you.
Yes, I think it goes used car salesmen, lawyers, and chamber presidents. Am I right, Frank? Mr. Doell.
I think my microphone's not on. There we go. I think everyone's going to agree that we should have ethics in government. It's a basis of a democracy. With what's the point of voting for people if they're not going to keep their promises and if they're not going to follow the laws that they're there to uphold? We're not supposed to use any examples specific, but there's things that rhyme with javelin that have been a problem recently, and we need to make sure that doesn't continue in future governments. And another part of the ethics in government is these governments are so big that and want to control so much of our lives that they have to take control, and they have to wiggle their way around rules because they want to get multiple things done that just can't get done together. I'm trying not to use examples, but saying that you're breaking the law for money is not an acceptable way to run a government. It's not an acceptable way to earn votes in a new election, and hopefully we do something about that.
Thank you. To be fair, I said I wouldn't use any examples because I'm an impartial moderator. But maybe it's best to stick away from the examples. Go ahead, Mr. Lake.
Wow. This is a tough question to tackle. It's, because 1 minute, it's like we're going to way oversimplify this. Let me start by saying this. First of all, the vast majority of people in Parliament, regardless of party, are in there for the right reasons because they want to make people's lives better. We have very different views on what it is that we want to do. I think what drives people crazy is, especially of late, is inauthentic actors or actions. People have a lot of grace for people making mistakes in their lives. We've all made mistakes, and we would not want a spotlight on those mistakes. We'd be embarrassed if that happened. I think what we've seen during the campaign is a lot of sort of finger pointing and a lot of, someone who has been given grace or looked for grace in one circumstance, the next day doesn't have any grace for anyone else when something similar happens. And it's not just politicians that need to do better there. You just look at your social media feed. We all need to do better there.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Garber.
So are we allowed to talk specific examples or not?
It's your campaign, sir.
All right. So I think this is a really good question, and it's something I think a lot about. I think one of my guiding principles in life is to live with compassion, and that's what I hope to bring in government. We've got basically a fake news party, a fake platform party, and a no platform party, and so we've got people holding back where major austerity is coming that's going to do real effects for real people, but people need, things aren't being upfront, and we see this pattern with conservative governments often where it turns out later that we're going to be feeling the brunt of the cuts. Everyday average people who end up not getting the services they need. So I think getting just honest government that does exactly what they're going to say is what you can look for in the NDP.
Thank you. Mr. Callio.
I was already told by the Veterans Coalition Party of Canada once I joined up and liked their vision and everything, if, and that's a big if, ever got into a seat, and that goes for everybody in the party, and it starts from the top and works its all the way down, every one of us has to sign a contract. Transparency, honesty, truth, duty, honor, right? Remember those three things that us soldiers know? Truth, duty, honor. We stick by those words. It's not just crap we spit out the side of our mouth. We will literally sign a piece of paper, and if we're in breach of contract, we lose our job. It's simple. How come the other parties can't do something like that? Just drum up that paperwork, you screw up SNC 11, bye-bye. You signed a contract, you're fired, and that's the way it should be. That's what we want to do.
Thank you, sir. Should we take a break here and do a lightning round question? So these lightning round questions are designed to help you get to know your candidate better. They're just quick answers. We'll just go down the table. We'll start with Mr. Lake. If you could have an unlimited supply of one thing in your life, what would it be?
Hockey.
Mr. Garber?
Music shows.
Mr. Callio?
I'd like to have a nice little area where I can go hunting and not have to worry about the game being poisoned from all the pollution.
Mr. Wong?
I would like to be able to meet each and every one person, regardless of their ethnicity, their color, and say hello to them and talk with them.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Doell?
How about freedom?
Okay. We go back to the more serious questions now, although I have a few lightning round questions in reserve. This next question... We'll start at the other end. Fair enough. This next question has to do with Indigenous rights. What is your party's position on the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People? We start with Mr. Garber.
Indigenous rights are a key pillar of the NDP platform, and they're a key pillar for me. I was just lucky enough to be a part of start of law school. We did a blanket presentation. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's really powerful presentation to talk about the plight of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And there's been long-standing agreements with Indigenous peoples that we have to honor, and we have to honor their right to self-determination. And I think having that ability to consult and to be co-creators of stuff that affects them is super important. So yes, my position and the party's position is to institute under it.
Thank you, Mr. Callio.
Lip service. It's all we've gotten. Lip service. Decades and decades and decades. People living on reserves with no clean drinking water. If it was Leduc, Beaumont, Nisku, anywhere, if there's a problem with the drinking water, you had to boil it, and you had to boil it, would you stand for it? No. And it would get fixed right away. I guarantee it would get fixed right away. The Indigenous community is our First Nations people. We were here, they were here first. Everybody else immigrated here. They got here first. The land was stolen from them. They got thrown off into places way off in the north where nothing grows or whatever, just crappy locations. Yes, absolutely, we need to take care of our Indigenous folks, and third world housing